We support the Real News Network because we want to have independent journalism. And in a democracy, there's nothing more important than the free flow of information. Please join with us and help support the Real News Network.
As Barack Obama plans to take over the White House, two wars face his decisions. He said Afghanistan is the war the U.S. should be fighting, and he's also said to fight the Afghan war, you have to get the Pakistani government more on board. And in that regard, he just made an appointment that might tell us something about the direction his administration is going to take. He appointed Bruce Riedel, a former CIA official, his advisor on Pakistan. Joining us to discuss this appointment and Obama and Pakistan and Afghanistan is Tariq Amin-Khan, a professor of political science at Ryerson University in Toronto and an expert on Pakistani politics. Welcome, Tariq.
You're welcome.
So Bruce Riedel has essentially said to Obama, and this is why he was appointed according to the newspaper reports, that what Obama should do is broker a peace agreement between Pakistan and India that allows the Pakistani government to pull troops back from Kashmir and move them up into the northwest frontier provinces and Waziristan and take on the Taliban, I assume, with hundreds of thousands of Pakistani troops. So what do you make of this proposal, and what do you make of this appointment?
You know, on the face of it, it looks like a very good proposal. But if you look into the details, what it is also suggesting is that Indian hegemony should be recognized in that area. It's also not including the Kashmiri people themselves into any kind of a settlement. It's basically talking about a negotiation between India and Pakistan brokered by the US. And that, I think, is a huge problem.
I mean, are they getting themselves into in the middle of another Middle East crisis? Talk a bit about the importance of Kashmir and what it means symbolically to Pakistan and also particularly to the Pakistan military.
Well, Kashmir is the reason why India and Pakistan have been at loggerheads ever since the partition of India in 1947. And the Kashmiri people are divided, between Pakistan and India. Part of it is in Pakistan, and a greater part is in India. Within Kashmir, there are at least three distinct religions. There are the Muslims, the Hindus, and the Buddhists. And now the Hindus are trying to reassert themselves. As you probably know, there have been a number of demonstrations. In fact, there have been a spontaneous uprising within the Muslim section of Kashmir. So it looks like there is a problem that India needs to deal with within its own borders in the first place. And not to include the Kashmiri people in any kind of a settlement, I think is a big injustice to them.
No, we're not sure that's the case. It may be whatever this settlement of Kashmir is that there's a role for the Kashmiri people. We don't actually know what they're talking about here in terms of what settlement is. All we've heard is some kind of vague rhetoric from Riedel and also from some other advisors that there should be a brokered Kashmir settlement.
But I think this is what analysts have been saying about Riedel, that he has in the past talked about an arrangement that I just described. And he's also the one who's talked about Indian hegemony, both of which won't be acceptable to Pakistan.
So is it a question that just isn't, this is a long process of negotiations, it won't have any immediate consequences on Pakistan's military ability? Or is there some temporary solution? Like, I mean, if the Americans were to try to broker a deal for every Pakistani soldier that heads to the northwest frontier provinces, India has to pull a soldier out.
Well, if they have something like that, I'm sure the Pakistanis would probably be acceptable to some arrangement like that. But I really don't think either India nor Pakistan will be willing to do that. Because this is really the problem between the two states, and I don't think the U.S. basically coming in and saying, okay, move your troops to the Afghan border will resolve that, and I don't think the military in Pakistan will accept something.
Talk a little bit about the history of that, because as I understand it, Kashmir is practically the raison d'etre for the Pakistani military. That the defense of Islamic Kashmir, and as a part of Pakistan, more or less, is one of the whole fundamental principles of why there is a Pakistani state and a Pakistani military. It'd be like telling the American military to give up the idea of fighting for freedom and democracy or something.
Right. I mean, this is the basis of the division of India. Kashmir was the place where it all began as far as Pakistan was concerned. Its first war with India way back in the 50s. And then there have been a number of UN resolutions talking about a plebiscite in Kashmir, talking about a kind of settlement. In fact, there are still UN observers in Kashmir. So I mean, there are two very different perspectives about this conflict between India and Pakistan. They do feel that they are both integral part of their states, whereas neither of them have consulted the Kashmiri people. And I think that is really the problem.
So even if this was a kind of doable proposition between Pakistan and India, which from what you're saying, and I think, as I understand the situation, it's far more complex than some easy settlement between the two states about Kashmir. But it does tell us something about Obama's mindset, because Bruce Riedel, in proposing this strategy, is that it's fundamentally a strategy for an increased militarization of how to deal with the Taliban question. So at a time when you hear more and more voices from Europe, and even within Afghanistan, about negotiations with the Taliban, this is a plan to try to get Pakistan to send hundreds of thousands, perhaps more troops, and throw them at the Taliban, which means it's completely dedicated towards a military outcome. So first of all, how doable is this, and what do you make of the policy?
And I think this is a philosophical difference, as I read it, between Obama and even the Pentagon. Because, for instance, General Petraeus, who's moved from Iraq to now looking after Afghanistan, he has recognized that there isn't a military solution. And he sees, for instance, but of course the US wants to negotiate with people who will surrender their arms and all, which again itself is a self-limiting proposition. But what I'm trying to say is that that recognition is there. But in the case of Obama, he feels that if you throw more troops at Afghanistan, it'll eventually resolve itself, and that Taliban will be defeated. But I think that the whole issue of Taliban is really a social and political problem, and it has to be dealt with at that level, both in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. For instance, in Pakistan, the Pakistani military has been pounding the areas where the Taliban are strong. And they haven't really been able to make a dent as far as the Taliban are concerned. Yes, they've moved from those areas where they're being attacked to other areas. And this kind of shifting will go on. But what is happening in the process is that people are saying enough. We don't want our homes and children and women killed in this process. And this really is
And just in the last week or two, we've had a continuation of deaths in villages on both sides of the Afghan-Pakistan border, where innocent people are getting killed in either Predator or other kinds of bombing missions.
Yes, and I think that the whole Predator drone attacks within Pakistani territory is another big issue that needs to be addressed. Whatever successes the military may have had, the Pakistani military may have had in terms of moving Taliban from a particular area, they get negated when the drone attacks continue, and they're almost on a daily basis.
So in the next segment of our interview, let's just discuss a little bit more what are possible policies Obama could follow, in your opinion, rather than just more militarization. Please join us for the next segment of our interview with Tariq Khan.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars and into environmental disaster, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Real hope means facing a complex reality. Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute. Visit therealnews.com.